What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to New Metal Releases. I'm your host. This is the show where every week I dig into the new metal albums dropping over the weekend, give you a quick rundown of each one and score them out of 10 so you know exactly what's worth your time. This week we've got a really interesting mix. We're talking 11 albums total, and honestly, it was a pretty strong week across the board. If you're into classic heavy metal and old school thrash, this week is basically a gift. But we've also got some stuff on the more extreme and progressive end of the spectrum. Death metal, black metal, post-black metal. So there's really something here for everyone. A few hints about what's coming up. One album made me think it was recorded in 1985 and somehow snuck into 2026. Another one features a legendary guest vocalist that any Accept fan is going to absolutely recognize. We've also got a band making their full-length debut after years of grinding, a Portuguese band that's changing their sound in a big way, and a Finnish death doom act that might just end up on a lot of year-end lists. On top of that, there's an album with a duo with a 25-year age gap between them that somehow works. As always, I'm ranking these from my lowest score to my highest, which is something I started doing recently. I think it really helps give you a clear picture of where everything lands. So let's get into it, starting at the bottom and working our way up. Kicking things off at number 11, we have a Portuguese post-black metal band that a lot of people in the metal community have been buzzing about this week. I've been following these guys since around 2022. I remember them as more of a melodic black metal band, but on this new album, their fifth, they've clearly shifted their sound in a pretty significant direction. It's more post-black metal now with some metalcore elements creeping in. The opening track was not too bad. It had that recognizable post-black sound with some intense vocals. The second track mixed traditional black metal with ambient and electronic elements, which has an interesting combination. There was another track to open like something out of a horror movie before launching into their new style. The rest of the album continued in that vein, a mix of atmospheric sections and black metal intensity. Here's the thing though, for whatever reason, the album didn't click with me on first listen. My score is 7.3 out of 10. It might be a grower. Maybe I need to spend some time with it, but right now I wasn't fully feeling it, and I think changes to the sound might take some time getting used to for the longtime fans. Number 10, Kate's Acid Hellbender. Coming at number 10 is a female-fronted heavy metal band that I honestly had never heard of before, which surprised me because apparently they are considered to be one of the first speed metal bands on the European continent. The band originally formed back in 1980 in Belgium, and while they went dormant for decades, the lead vocalist revived the project and eventually recorded this debut album under a new name. This had a classic old-school heavy metal sound. The lead vocalist has a very powerful, commanding heavy metal voice, and it works really well with the material. The title track that opened the album was a cool, straight-ahead heavy metal song. The second track had a heavy metal guitar riff with darker tone in the verses that I really enjoyed. There was another track that had a hard-driving locomotive kind of rhythm that reminded me of classic acts from the early 80s. And towards the end of the album, there was a track that leaned more into 1970s hard rock territory. Think Deep Purple and early Kiss, which was a nice change of pace. My score, 7.5 out of 10. Overall, it was a well-rounded hard rock and heavy metal album. Nothing flashy, nothing trendy, just honest heavy metal the way it used to be made. Number 9, Tyketto, Closer to the Sun. At number 9, we have a band I actually remember from back in the day. It's one of those acts that probably could have been a lot bigger if the timing had been different. They had the talent and the songs, but by the time they were gaining momentum, the whole landscape of rock and metal was shifting. The new album leans into melodic hard rock, glam metal, and at times something closer to adult contemporary. It reminded me a little of what Bon Jovi sounds like these days. It's accessible, it's polished, and aimed at a broader audience. The album opener was a classic hard rock track that was easy to get into right away. There were some power ballads and more acoustic moments, including one song that felt like a blend of 80s power ballad and modern country, which was an interesting combination. Then there were moments on the album where they brought back that harder edge, Some tracks had a white snake or deep purple kind of feel, which I liked. My score would be 7.7 out of 10. Honestly, I wasn't completely sold on it after one listen. It could be a grower. There's enough variety on the album to keep you engaged, but some of it is softer than what I would normally gravitate towards. Number 8, The Silver Looking Glass Hymnal Blue. At number 8, we have an album that is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from what most I've covered this week. Most of the records in this episode were traditional heavy metal or hard rock, stuff that's accessible for the casual metal fan. This one's not that. This band features members of some well-regarded acts in the underground metal world, and they blend extreme metal genres in ways that are complex and challenging. It's not easy listening to music, and I mean that in the best possible way. The opening track was a genre-bending piece that mixed black metal and death metal with sections where they pulled back and got more melodic and clean vocals. The second track opened in an atmospheric way before launching into full black metal intensity. There was also a more progressive sounding track with stronger melodic presence in the guitars that showed another side of what this band can do. I want to be clear, I would need to spend some more time with this album to fully appreciate everything that's going on. The level of musicianship is genuinely impressive. When I first listened, it takes some effort to get through. My score is 7.9 out of 10. If you're into extreme and progressive metal and you want something that rewards deep listening, it's worth checking out. Number 7, Sabretooth, First Bite. This is a Long Island band that's been around since 2008 and the first full-length album released independently. This was an enjoyable, well-rounded, traditional heavy metal album. If you're a fan of classic acts from the 80s, bands like Accept, Gravedigger, or Primal Fear, it's going to hit the spot. The vocalist had a real classic heavy metal quality that suited the music perfectly. The opening track was a straightforward, confident heavy metal song. The second track picked up the pace and got more aggressive and energetic. Then things shifted into more melodic territory on the third track, and there was even a track that leaned more into glam metal sounds, something in the vein of Poison or early Motley Crue. What I appreciated most about this album was how well-rounded it was. These guys clearly love the genre and have a solid handle on all the different flavors with it. My score, 8 out of 10. There was no power ballad, which some people might appreciate, others might miss, but overall, it was a very solid debut. Number 6, Gutvoid, Liminal Shrines. So we have another album from the extremely technical end of the metal spectrum. This is a Canadian death metal quartet and their second full-length album. The approach here is hard to pin down in a simple description. It's technical death metal, but with an old school feel, some very progressive structures. The opening track was actually an extended intro that ran about 3 minutes to set the atmosphere before the album really got going. After that, you get 5 main tracks, and these are long ones. We're talking 6 to 12 minutes each. One of the standout tracks was a very dense, deliberate piece with guitar chords, slower piece, and a mix of melodic and extreme moments. Another track had more of that old school death metal energy, but still threw in plenty of twists and turns to keep you guessing. Like a few of the other albums on this list, it's not easy listening, but if you're patient and willing to give it attention asked for, the payoffs here. My score, 8.1 out of 10. The musicianship is a very high level. Number 5, Hanging Garden, Isle of Bliss. At number 5, we have a Finnish Death Doom septet releasing their 9th full-length album. And yes, it is the 9th album. These guys have been doing that for a long time. And on this record, they pushed their sound into heavier, darker, and more sinister territory while still maintaining that melancholic beauty that fans know and love. The opening track was a blend of black metal and progressive metal with both clean and harsh vocals, which immediately told you that this is a band operating at a high level. The title track was one of the slower, more melodic pieces on the album with gothic atmosphere that reminded me of classic Death Doom acts. There was another track that built this massive, epic soundscape leaning more towards progressive and gothic metal. I'll be honest, I need more time with this one. It's complex music and asks a lot from the listener on the first pass, but there's something genuinely special here. My score, 8.2 out of 10. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see this album showing up on a lot of year-end lists to come in December. Number 4, Axel Rudi Pell, Ghost Town. So now we're getting into the upper tier now. At number 4 is the German hard rock guitarist releasing his 23rd studio album, and I know it sounds like a lot. It is. The guy's been very prolific. I actually only started listening to him fairly recently, with his previous album being my first introduction to his work. The new record is exactly what you would expect from him, and I mean that in a good way. It's melodic heavy metal and hard rock with big guitar tones, keyboards, strong melodies, and memorable hooks. One of the highlights was a very strong melodic hard rock track bordering on heavy metal that I thought was one of the better songs on the record. Then there was a track featuring a very well-known vocalist who has been associated with one of the most legendary German heavy metal bands for decades, and hearing him on this track was a real highlight, which is Udo Dirkschneider, and it's classic heavy metal with big powerful vocals. There's also a ballad that surprised me with an intro that had some Iron Maiden qualities and some Eastern flavor guitar work in the style of Ritchie Blackmore, and that ended up being one of my favorites on the album. Overall, a very solid release. My score, 8.3 out of 10. Nothing's going to reinvent the wheel, but if you like melodic hard rock and classic heavy metal, this delivers exactly what you want. Number 3, Stainless, Lady of Lust and Steel. Coming in number 3 is the hard rock and heavy metal band from Portland, Oregon, releasing their first full-length album. This was a shorter record, 8 songs, about 36 minutes, but made the most of every minute. The opening track was a pure classic heavy metal. It sounded like it was pulled straight from the 80s. It was a crossover zone between glam metal and traditional heavy metal. Vocals had some qualities that reminded me of the classic LA Guns, like that type of vocals, and the second track was more on the melodic heavy metal side. It was some Iron Maiden style energy in the riffs and pace. There was a track on this album that genuinely surprised me. It had a funk metal quality that you don't really hear much of that anymore. That was very popular in the early 90s. And that kind of variety is what separates good albums from the great albums, which is why this one is higher up. There was another track I liked with impressive neoclassical guitar work. It added another dimension to the record. My score, 8.4 out of 10. The band isn't trying to be anything other than what they are, which is they are. It's a really tight, well-executed heavy metal band with classic sensibilities and enough variety to keep things interesting across 8 tracks. Number 2, Clocktowers with Genesis. Number 2 is the debut full-length album from a duo based in Ohio. This band has a very interesting backstory. The two members first played together years ago, went their separate ways, and then randomly ran into each other at a pizza place. And that meeting turned into a jam session. That jam session turned into a song. And the song turned into this album. And that's really the story. So what I found interesting about this band is that it's hard to put them in one box. They draw from a wide range of classic heavy metal and hard rock influences, and you can hear all that in the music. The vocalist has a very big, powerful voice. His name is Tariq, and it reminded me of Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, but he has multiple styles. He goes between styles throughout the album. The opening track sets a tone with dark guitar riffs and a thick, powerful bass sound. And the second track was more progressive and atmospheric and had more different vocal approaches. And another track mixed clean guitars and keyboards with heavier sections. And then there was a track named after the band itself called Clocktowers, which is a pretty cool neoclassical metal piece. The album is dense and complex, and honestly, I would need to do an entire dedicated video to really do it justice. My score, 8.5 out of 10. I think it's absolutely worth your time, and check it out. Number 1, Nuclear Warfare, All Hail to the Liberator. And here we are. The top spot this week goes to a thrash metal band from Brazil releasing their 7th studio album, and this one is the real deal. And I want to say this directly to anyone who was disappointed by the new Exodus album and went online to complain about it. Stop what you're doing, go find this album and listen to it, because this is the album you were wishing Exodus had made. It's old school thrash metal done right. The guitar riffs are razor sharp. The drumming is fast and relentless. The lead guitar playing is precise and controlled, and the vocals are harsh and aggressive in a way that reminds me of the classic German thrash acts, something like Creator, that type of intensity. The album opens with a track that's pure thrash metal from the very first second. No build-up, no atmospheric intro, just straight into it. Then there was the title track. It brings back everything you love about 80s thrash. And there was another song, had an intro, briefly sounded like, could have been like an Iron Maiden song with the bass guitar leading things in, then just exploded into full thrash. One thing I really noticed on this track was the use of palm muting on this track and many of the other tracks. It's something you don't really hear that much in modern metal. It really made a big difference, and I feel it really made an impact on the song and the album. My score, 9 out of 10. Overall, it was a fantastic album. If you love classic thrash metal, it's absolutely mandatory listening for this week. And that's all. If you missed last week's episode, I'm going to have it up on the screen right now. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. There's some great stuff on that one too. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Helps the channel more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss next week's episode. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you've been listening to this week or if there was anything that I missed. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one.